Thanks for tuning in to 101.3 BKMG The Farce, coming to you live from separate places, pre-recorded. Now presenting The Bane and Mickey Show. Recording again.
All right. Technical difficulties managed.
Yay.
Wonderful.
All right. Well, welcome again, everyone, to our Bane and Mickey podcast, even though they have nothing to do with it. Don't sue us.
Well, I mean, they don't know that. It could have everything to do with it. Who knows? Welcome back. This is episode 13, lucky number 13.
Yes.
Lucky for some, unlucky for others, whatever. I like to say it's lucky.
It's always better to be positive.
It is, yeah. I'm a little surprised we've managed to make so many, but good on us, right?
We're doing it.
How many times can I say right? Have you seen anything good recently, Gavin?
Recently I watched the new season of Rick and Morty, which they put on Hulu, and I watched Enola Holmes, pretty much for the Victorian aesthetic, and Henry Cavill and Millie Bobby Brown. It was actually pretty interesting. It was kind of like a weird teen drama meets the Sherlock Holmes that Robert Downey Jr. did.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. It's on my list, but...
farther down the list.
Yeah.
What have you watched that was further up your list?
I finished watching Haunting of Hill House, which was really, really good. Thoroughly enjoyable. I love the story and just the way they tell the story. And they kind of they tell it from when they're kids and then when they're adults, but everything is, still happening kind of. And it's just got a really good cast. So it's really enjoyable. Now I just got to watch Bly Manor and, actually be caught up in the world.
That's ridiculous.
I also watched The Impossible, which is a movie I've been wanting to watch for a while now and just couldn't, I didn't have a way to watch it, but Netflix put it up now. So I watched that. It's really good. It's based on a true story about the 2004 tsunami in East Asia. And it's like one of the first films that Tom Holland was in. He's just a small little bean.
Little baby spider.
Small little bean. Yeah. But still really, really incredibly talented.
Stupid Tom.
So yeah, it's insane. Especially the stuff they have to do in that film. They're in the water 90% of the time, which sounds horrible. And it's just, it's full of emotion and whatnot. It also has Ewan McGregor and Naomi Watts. And who directed it? J.A. Bayona directed it, and then it was written by Sergio G. Sanchez and Maria Bivon, which are some good writers. They've got some good scripts.
I do know all those people, so I agree.
Yeah. Good stuff, but yeah, intense. It's a disaster movie, so it's not for everyone, but it's also heartwarming, I guess. I don't know.
Speaking of movies that are not disasters, 1917.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna connect it to intense drama, conflict, trauma-heavy films.
I can't really think. I mean, 1917 sort of falls in that category. But I was trying to smoothly transition into our topic of today, which I feel like I did flawlessly, and nobody would.
Oh, it's so flawless, so flawless. No one's gonna care or comment or even notice. It was beautiful. Today we're going to talk about 1917. It came out in 2019, in December of 2019. Right at the end? Yeah, right at the end of the year. They just did that little slippy in thing where they, where they try and get in right at the end of the year.
Got to get there for Oscar season.
Okay.
Hold on, what?
On IMDb,
it says January 10th,
I was
2020.
Curious. It says,
but it also says,
but then it also says 2019. Which, what happened is, I'm pretty sure it was early release in 2019. So that it could be qualified for the Oscars. It's like they knew the world was going to end in 2020. Although they could have like swept this year. I'm just saying.
That's true.
Because it was only in select theaters, I'm pretty sure, in December of 2019. And it was like right at the end of 2019. But yes, then 2020. Anyways, yeah, this was like, I think this was like one of the last movies I saw in the theater, actually.
Not me. I'm not a big war movie fan, but I did actually really enjoy this movie. And I did not know going into it that it was a one take, and it took me like 15 minutes to realize what was happening.
Well, it's a one take, but it's also like a 7x1 take because they cut multiple times, but they hide it really well.
Duh. There's only a couple movies that are actual one takes. There was like this movie, I think it was called The Russian Ark, that Patrick told us about, that they actually did the full one take with no editing.
Yeah, and it's a lot more common with like short films because doing 15 minutes is a lot easier than doing 2 hours. But yeah, well, yeah, but it's similar to like Birdman was known really heavily for its kind of like one take almost.
But it's a lot more stylized than Birdman. Like I don't feel like in this movie.
No. This was intentionally shot to look like it is a single take of the whole thing, which I really love. One takes or like long shots because it really keeps you in the moment of the drama and the scene, and it really lets you like keep the integrity of the actor's performance versus like cutting between multiple angles, and like sometimes your angles and aren't from the same take, and so it's kind of like but no, that I love long takes. My problem though with this one, well, I mean, kind of a problem. When I was watching it though, when I took cinematography with Patrick, we did a project where we had to do a one-shot short film, and we were encouraged not to cut at all, but we were allowed to have a single cut, hidden cut if we absolutely needed to for like tech issues or whatever. And so we spent the couple days leading up to our project like watching scenes, one take scenes from various movies and short films, and like trying to strategize like finding the cut or like seeing how they hit those cuts. And so when I was watching this film, it was kind of like a scavenger hunt almost, because I was like, did you guys see that? They just hit nobody else saw the cut that they just me. Oh, okay. Okay. So it was like, it wasn't like, I mean, I still really enjoyed the movie, but like it was also like, I don't know, just cursed film from film school, because you just watch movies differently. It's a different experience because
you have a little more insight into how they're made.
Yeah, but it's fine. I still really, really enjoyed it. This is also, this film was directed by Sam Mendes. He also co-wrote it with Christy Wilson Cairns, but Sam Mendes also directed Skyfall and Spectre, which I totally forgot about when his name was on this. He also did American Beauty.
Huh. Cool.
Which I totally didn't even realize. But yeah, great, amazing stuff. I could honestly talk about the film for days. It's probably one of, I don't know. I also just really like war films because I watched them a lot growing up, and my dad really likes them. Like I watched a lot of Band of Brothers and Saving Private Ryan and MASH. I mean, MASH is its own thing though, but
close enough.
Close enough, yeah. Yeah. No, I guess, yeah, going back to cinematography.
It was Roger Deakins, right?
Yeah.
He just won last year, I think, for Blade Runner.
In 2019?
19. Yeah, 19.
Well, yeah, the 2018 films, but it was held
2017, I guess. Ugh. That was a long time ago.
Whatever, yeah.
Yes, 2017, so it would have been 2018, I guess, when he got the award.
Yeah, and he won cinematography this last year for
nice.
this film. He won cinematography. They also won visual effects.
Editing.
and they won sound mixing.
Got a bunch of stuff for editing too. That was
Not for the
not for the
Oscars,
Oscars, but it
but
just
for
got.
other. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it was.
They were nominated for a lot, which I think we were talking about this with another on another episode, that this year had a bunch of hot, like really, it was a really competitive season for the Oscars. And so, you know, like they were nominated, 1917 was nominated for screenplay and directing and best picture. And so like, which all these nominations are amazing. And I'm not like bummed that they lost against others, but it was also like, I mean, it's nice to also just acknowledge these achievements in art and filmmaking, which nominations do that, acknowledge that as well. But unfortunately, you can't have 5 best directing films.
That's true. That's true.
I was actually, you were saying, yeah, you just watched
Yes,
this
I just watched it a couple days ago.
Yeah, you just watched it. And I watched it when it came out, but I had actually been like hyped up for it in that like I was following the film for a good 9 to 12 months before it came out, because I think I first found out about it from IMDb, because like I like to like keep tabs on like some of my favorite actors and like see what they're up to and whatnot. And so, you know, it'll tell you if they're like currently filming or if they're in pre-production or whatever sometimes. And so I saw this on IMDb when it was like in pre-pro, and I was like, oh, this looks really, really interesting, and it's got a great cast. And so I was like hyped for it for months. And then, you know, we got a trailer, and I was like, oh, okay, everyone's gonna go see this with me, right?
And then nobody saw it with you.
And then yeah,
that's all right.
I think also I was just like the only person in town, and I like to go see movies by myself.
Fair enough.
Sometimes, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
It's very pretty.
Also, it was like, it is very, very, very pretty. And a lot of that, I think, also is akin to they shot most all of it on location. And so you get these natural lands and these natural fields, and it's all in England. They shot like entirely in England. They shot in wide open fields. They shot on like an airfield. And then also just a couple like, I think fields that are currently or still used as like military training ground kind of things. And so they had all this wide open space that they could just turn into these recreated worlds, which is it time to get into set design? Because holy fuck.
I was just looking up like who did a lot of the set.
The production designer was Dennis Gassner. And he was actually, because I was reading up a lot of very, I mean, this whole film, oh my gosh. Everything, like I said, it's 90% on, more or less on location, and very little is CGI. I think there are 2 scenes I know for sure are CGI or have some CGI, and that's when they're in France, because they like extended some of the buildings and whatnot. But for the most part, the foreground buildings are ruins that they created, but then like they just remapped them for the background. But yeah, the waterfall too. But you know, they had to recreate the world of 1917 and World War I, and Dennis Gassner was talking about the amount of detail and precision that they had to put into this, especially because you're watching a 7-minute take or a 7-minute scene, and so every little detail has to be perfect, and because you can't cut around it, or you can't like edit past it, because it's there and it's going to be there the whole time. And so there's so many practicals. They rebuilt these, like I was saying, they used some like training grounds, so there's already, I think, some trenches built, and they just like set decked the hell out of these trenches.
I was reading that they did dig a lot of trenches too.
They did dig new ones for sure. Or like when they go through No Man's Land, you have all of these fucking craters they had to build and dig, and then put all this like murky dark water and all these like, I was like, how the hell do you create this? And so I was looking up the budget, and it was $100 million roughly.
That's a pretty sizable budget.
It's pretty sizable. And then I was comparing that to because we were also wanting to compare this to Dunkirk, which we'll get more into, but it was the same budget as Dunkirk, more or less, which I suppose they're both period pieces, and so a lot of that is going into recreating these worlds. You have to make all the costumes
I like this better than Dunkirk.
heavily accurate. I think, was it this one? I think it was this film, maybe, that I was reading about. I might be entirely wrong, but they let so they had all the costumes and whatnot. I swear it was this one. They have all the costumes and like the basic pieces for the actors, but then they would let the actors go in and be like, or they had a bunch of like trinkets and like memorabilia that then they let the actors go and be like, yes, I'm going to put this piece on my uniform because my character would have that. Or like, we're going to put a little patch here and like my character is going to carry this sort of thing. Or like on their bag is going to be like this. And so they like customizing the costumes based off of like, and like working with the actors to like do that. And so like when you watch it too, like all of them, they're all in uniform and they're all wearing the same thing, but they're also so entirely different. Even just Schofield and Lake, the what they have on the outside of their uniforms and inside. Yeah, this film also, I think what I obsess over so much about it is, and Mendes was talking about this too, is normally with films and television, you do rehearsals. You'll be on set and you'll rehearse the scene, whatever, you'll go through it. But a lot of times that happens day of or like a couple days before, and then you bring in the camera and you do the thing. But for this, they were rehearsing for months beforehand, before they even built sets, before they'd even finalized design and even cinematography. Mendes was saying they like rehearsed in a studio with like cardboard box sets so that they could time out and plan how long it would take for them to walk from point A to point B, and then they could go out to the field and mark like point A, point B.
I mean, I feel like you'd have
and then
to.
They could build around it.
There's no way you could plan something that big without doing a ton of rehearsals.
Oh yeah. And I don't know how long they were rehearsing, but I want to say it was like over a year. It was insane. Like, because also then you get to parts where you're using all these practicals and there's explosions and like whatnot that you can only do a take so many times before your set is ruined or you run out of charges. You can, and because there's they're long takes, your actors are gonna wear out and not want to, you can only, and also for time's sake, you can only do it so many times. So you have to, everything has to be perfectly done. It's almost like putting on a play because you rehearse all this time leading up to it, and then it's like, okay, now we're doing, except you only have like one show versus like 14. but it's because everything has to be so precise for when it actually happens.
Right. And you were talking about Dunkirk a little bit. Actually, I looked it up and they have the same editor, Lee Smith. He edited that. He edited this, Dunkirk, the Dark Knight movies, a bunch of Christopher Nolan stuff. But what I like a lot about this is it's kind of mundane in a way. Like, it just feels like an everyday thing with them, and they're not trying to add a lot of additional drama or gravitas to the situation. And they're just sort of, it's very, this is just how it is, and this is how they do whatever.
I think you were saying it's very slice of life. Like it takes place over the course of like 3 days.
Maybe.
Unlike, Dunkirk is like takes place over a short period
2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe.
Right. So it's a little longer. You don't, but especially for a war film, you don't get a sense of the now as much, I think, because they're expanded over a course of time. And so this is very in the moment, in the now. And yeah, it is very like laid back in a way for a war film, kind of like I was saying, it's got these good like mixes of like, now we're just walking and talking compared to, and then, heavy, intense violence, explosions, gunfire. And now we're going to take a little break again so that you're not overwhelmed for 2 hours. And like, being bludgeoned, like all your senses are being bludgeoned, you like get to taste. So it has a nice like kind of balance,
Right.
which is not something you get for you know a lot of war
Well,
genre
because it's more
films.
about Schofield and Blake and less about
Right.
the war overall, I guess. And
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I would even say it's more about
yeah.
Schofield than than Blake. But yeah, it's just these two, and that's also, you know, a lot of times you'll focus on a unit or
A whole
a
side.
company, or a whole side or two sides. And so this is just, we're taking we're taking two individuals. And I think that's also something beautiful about this script and this story, is that it's so individualized, and it's not, you don't see the picture as a big picture. You get to actually dig in with these individuals, and it really brings it to heart, I think.
Well, and I feel like one of the other things is like there was a lot of like pretty famous people and cameos in this. You had like Colin Firth, Andrew Scott, Benedict Cumberbatch, Richard Madden, oh my gosh, Mark Strong, but they don't draw attention to them in any way, in any specific or special way. They're just other people that are.
They just kind of show up.
Which, like in a lot of movies,
the first time,
like I was just gonna say Marvel movies because it happens a lot where it'll be like dramatic music, a push in, and then it turns around and bum bum bum, there they are.
Yeah, or they're like heavily advertised in trailers and whatnot, which like I think you do see. I think you see maybe Colin Firth and Benedict Cumberbatch in the trailer, but it's also like they're not advertised as like, this is the main character, this is the big brutal. It's because they just kind of show up. And it's subtle, and I like that too, because it's nice to have not like young new faces, or like, especially when you have such big celeb names, like it's always sometimes I don't want to shit on like performance or anything. I don't know, like sometimes they're cast because they need money, and that's how you get audiences and whatnot. But it was really, really great having the two actors, Dean Charles Chapman, who plays Blake, and then George McKay, who plays Schofield. They're young. I know George McKay from a variety of things, but I think there, there's a decent amount of like indies, and so but he is more becoming more well known and up and coming. But like Dean Charles Chapman is not in a whole lot.
Game of Thrones.
He was in Game of Thrones.
Like, that's where most people are going to know him from, is Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and he was fairly younger. Like,
but he looks the same, at least to me.
Yeah. So, but I would say this is one of his big roles, and he's the first billed name too. So it's like, it's nice to see the use of young incoming talent.
I've never actually seen George McKay in anything, but I know a lot of stuff that he's done. Like, I've heard of a lot of his projects, like 11/23/63 or 11/22/63.
Finally watched Captain Fantastic.
No, I didn't watch that, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, he's in that. That's why I'm saying if you finally watch it. He's in Pride.
Ophelia, How I Live Now. I mean, I've heard of all these things. I just haven't seen any of them.
Watched them. And that's the thing, is that like, not a lot of people have like seen them, or they're like a lot smaller indie kind of productions, but great stuff. Anyways, I really liked the casting for this one. And the kind of subtle toss-ins. I think the first time Andrew Scott comes in, you're also, because he's using an English accent versus his native Irish accent. Yeah, well, yes, and it's like half and half. It's supposed to be British.
I don't feel like he nailed it.
Well, because his Irish accent is so thick.
Which is not a problem. Like, I don't care.
It's not a problem. It's a lovely accent, and it's usually utilized for so it's just funny. But also, Andrew Scott is such a character. I think he's the one moment in this film, it's at the end, and they're going down the the trenches, and he's like doing some dumb like holy water like thing. That's I think that's another thing that's filmed as well, is there's some great like little clips and like jabs that keep like a lighthearted tone.
Age before beauty.
Momentarily. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, what is this? Or they're, yeah, it's a great script, and it definitely helps. You know, war films can be intense, and they're not for everyone, and so, you know, mixing it up to kind of bring back a little like calm and whatnot, and it almost is like that's how it is in the field too. Is you'll be intensified with hours and days of just brutal, barraging of like of gunfire and explosions, and then you'll just be sitting around for hours on end doing nothing, and so it kind of like really, really well encapsulates that.
What I think was kind of also interesting about the age before beauty line was like, usually when you say age before beauty, it means the other person goes first because they're old, but he said age before beauty and then he went first.
And then goes first, and it's like, oh, okay.
It's like, way to just say that you like your friend, but whatever.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's adorable. You know, it's a really great story of brotherhood and comradeship. Yeah. I mean, even just the moments, again, you know, they get out of the mine shaft and then they're just walking, and Blake is telling some dumb story about a rat. And
I honestly,
and you're like, this is so great, but also like,
I thought they killed Schofield. Yeah. Like, I thought he was dead in the mine part when he blew up.
In the mines, yeah, it's intense.
Well, because I thought for sure one of them was going to die. I just thought it was going to be Schofield.
And yeah,
not spoilers.
And then you find out he's kind of like he's the protagonist all along. Which, I mean, it does open on him, and
like it makes sense that it's him. It's just not what I expected.
Right. Well, yeah, because it's Blake's the one that got them into this. Well, I mean, it's not him. Yeah, but there's that one part where he's like, "Why did you choose me? What the
I thought we were gonna be doing something easy. I thought we were just getting food or whatever."
Blake is so pure. Oh my gosh.
Can we talk about his death scene for a minute? Sorry, there's gonna be some spoilers.
No, I mean, I think we said in episode 1 of this podcast that we're spoiling shit. So,
but still,
you haven't figured that out by now.
Plus, we already spoiled it. But
right.
I think it was interesting how they didn't even focus on him when it happened. Like, I mean, I definitely like when the Nazi crashed, I thought for sure that he was going to attack him. Like, that seemed like a given. But then they killed him.
You know something bad's happening.
And then he dies. And it was all very, like, it was dramatic, but it was also, like I was saying earlier, just kind of sort of mundane, and they don't treat it super special until the end with his brother. Yeah. Well, even also there's that slight moment when he has his, like, last breaths, and Schofield comes up to him, and he like pulls out the photo of his family and whatnot. But it's also like, it also just goes to show how little time they had to grieve in all of these moments, because it's like boom, 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 one thing after another. And so it's like, okay, but your friend just died in your arms, but also you have to go before you die. You have to deliver this message so bunch of other people don't die,
and you're on a time crunch, so it's
a whole thing,
heavy, but it's really, really well done. And just the whole cherry tree thing,
it's all very good. It's all very nice. It's very good stuff. Do you want to delve a little more into why this movie is not Dunkirk?
Yeah, I mean,
just because they're both period piece war films that have similar posters doesn't make them the same.
Right. Because I was also looking at the budget and the box office results. They started with a similar budget. They both, I mean, the first day of 1917, it like got back, it like earned back a third of its budget. It's like insane. And same with like Dunkirk. They both, like, you know, they both did really well. But Dunkirk got probably, I think I wrote it got like 200 million more in box office.
That's all right. It's Christopher Nolan.
Which is fine. Yeah, it's Christopher, that film was so hyped. It's good too. I'm not sure. That's a beautiful film. It's also one of my favorites. I honestly have a hard time choosing between them both, and it's for different reasons. But Dunkirk made a little more. It's Christopher Nolan. I think also 1917 came out, and people were like, oh, it's just another Dunkirk. And so a lot less people were going, but it's not.
At all. It's not even close.
We're going to start with the very obvious. It's a different time period. It's a different war.
World War I versus World War II. Not sure how much you know your history, but those are generally not. They're not the same.
They're very different. If you're someone like me, you immediately just look at two pictures and you're like, oh, their uniforms are different because they're 20 years apart.
And
even literally just starting with the fucking bucket hats. Like, know your history, people. I'm kidding.
But you should know it a little bit.
I've done too much production and design history research. But yeah, it's a different time period, but also this one focuses on a single pair. Again, we talked about it's very individual. Dunkirk focuses on 3 interconnected groups, by land, by sea, by air kind of thing is their like thing. And it's also, Dunkirk is also focused on a bigger, larger group in a way, because it's focused on kind of the whole army while kind of peering in on these single people. But and then even just the production is different. 1917 has the one take. In a way, Dunkirk is heavily focused on editing and sound design and everything.
And plus with the non-linear timelines and story arc, it's a lot more, I want to call it's a little more sci-fi-ish. It's just more like touching the tip.
The storytelling
method, I guess, would be more accurate way of saying it, and not just saying any non-linear story is sci-fi.
Right. And then again, we talked about 1917 takes place over the course of like 2, maybe 3 days. Dunkirk is over like 2 weeks, maybe, give or take. So even just that whole thing. But I think also with 1917 is a lot of your scenes are just Blake and Schofield. You do have big, heavy scenes where you have a lot of background extras in the trenches mainly. But for the most part, a lot of it is just Blake and Schofield kind of on their own. Dunkirk, you have a ton of people on the beach in the town, and then even on the boat. I mean, it's insane the amount of people they had for that. But then the films are very similar. They were both, they had similar budgets. They were also both made with the intention of having very little CGI. Dunkirk has a little bit more.
Just because of the planes and stuff.
Because of what they can do with their editing, and since they're not doing one take. But Dunkirk also, both of these films filmed heavily on location. I think, Dunkirk was also almost like 90% on location. They used a lot of the real locations from history in France and along the coast. But they did, because these places have been rebuilt and reestablished, they have to CGI war-torn buildings and whatnot. I was also reading instead of doing a lot of like CGI ships and planes and stuff, they had like model, I don't know how this worked, but they had a lot of like model planes and like prop cardboard figure cutouts for distance.
Probably things. Just forced perspective.
A lot of forced perspective so that you can get those mass amounts. And then of course also digitally, multiplying kind of like they do in Lord of the Rings. But in 1917, there is very little CGI. Again, it was shot with that intent. I think, like I was saying, the scenes in France, they had to do a little bit, just, not all the buildings that they're filming by are torn down or whatever, but a lot of it is real. They built these sets on these fields and on location, and the amount of practical effects, I don't know how many practical effects are in Dunkirk, but like all of the explosives and charges in 1917 are practical live effects, when they're in the mine shaft and everything's falling around behind them. and when they're in no man's land, especially, all of that is, really there. And then even I think my favorite part, and one of the like fun facts about this film, that George McKay was talking about on some interview, where in that big scene where they're all charging out of the trenches, and you literally have hundreds of thousands of extras just running across a field, and there's explosions and everything. He like runs into someone and trips. He does it like 2 or 3 times. He like gets like hit by someone and trips. And he was talking about how, they practiced this for weeks, and he was perfectly fine the whole time. He made the whole charge all the time. And then they get to filming it, and he gets run into someone, trips, but then he just keeps going because you have to get the take. Right. You can't stop because you've just used so much, like millions of dollars worth of explosives.
Got to keep going.
That you can't say. And that's the take they go with. And I think it just adds to that moment too, of that, like, you cannot stop. You have to keep going, where he gets trampled like 3 times and gets back up again. I think it's just great. But yeah, like all of that real fucking, it's so good.
The Art of War.
When will Kendall shut up? Never.
Never. It's a period war film.
Never.
That's game over.
It's like everything I live for. I was lucky enough to do a short piece with a World War II flashback, but it was like not even like, it's literally like a 30-second thing, and it's so, I would love to do a whole
more than 30 seconds
piece, a whole fucking piece. Ugh. But also, like, the amount of money that goes into just period costuming, and literally everything. Anyways. Yeah, but like I was saying, I think, they're different films. I think you should give 1917 a chance, because I know a lot of people are like, just Dunkirk.
It's not.
And it's surprising they came out so soon after each other. But again, they're 2 different points in history. They're 2 different movies. They're 2 completely different stories. But yeah, I love them both for different things. I think that's why I can't choose like one favorite over the other, because they're both brilliantly amazing, and they've accomplished a lot of things for different reasons.
Dunkirk was too loud for me.
They're not the same.
Yeah, Dunkirk? It makes me sound like a 100-year-old man, but it was too loud.
Well, it was really, really, really loud, but that's something I loved about that film. I was lucky enough to see it in IMAX, which was so insanely intense. But one of the things about that film is they do not cut out the intense volume of gunshots and explosions. And in a lot of films, a gunshot will go off and it'll be like, oh, it's not that loud, blah, blah, blah. Gunshots are fucking loud. I don't know if you've ever...
Not recently.
Got a gun. But they're fucking loud. And so I think that was one of the beauties when I saw Dunkirk, was I was like, holy shit. I'm like, I feel like I'm in
the war zone,
in this world. Yeah, it's beautiful. But it is very loud. It's very intense, very heavy. But yeah, and then I mean, this film 1917 is
it's a lot more. I like the sort of
so beautiful,
subtle, mundane beauty of the whole thing.
It's and I think that's also a thing with these one takes, is you can really admire and look at this beauty of, and it's not even just like, not just the beauty of like the production design, but you can really relish in the beauty of the design and the set and the directing and the cinematography, just for long moments at a time, because again, you're not distracted by all this heavy editing and whatnot. You just get to be mesmerized and walk through
the whole thing,
the world.
Yes.
Yeah, it's beautiful. What I have
no more final thoughts. You pretty much said them all.
I mean, like,
so
yeah, like I said, I could keep going. If you want to have this discussion with me,
I don't really have any questions.
It will never end.
That's true.
And yeah, there's not a whole lot that I did not like about this movie. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
I mean, you could go in and get nitpicky, but like, there's not,
at that point, you're just kind of being a turd.
Yeah.
My biggest complaint is that it's a war movie, and I'm not a huge fan of those. But that kind of just is trumped by
Which,
everything else about
yeah,
it, because it actually doesn't really feel like a war movie in the traditional sense, or when you think about it,
exactly.
because it's very contained and it's more of a character story
Uh-huh.
set in that time than like an actual war movie where it's like lots of boom, bows, pow, blow up the bad guys.
Yes, that is how war movies
Which
go.
is true.
Um, yeah. No, yeah, it's really something of its own. Um,
Shall we delve into some random, timely topics?
I think it is random topic time
Pow, pow, pow,
indeed.
pow.
Choose a blue one. What is your zombie plan?
Oh boy, my zombie plan.
Well, I can tell you what my zombie plan is
What is
not.
it not?
I will not go to Costco or Walmart or any of those big corporate stores because you will fucking get trampled before you even get
I
through the
might just
doors.
go to the Winchester and wait for the whole thing to blow over.
I have watched enough Walking Dead that I know how to survive the apocalypse. Um, no, I think I don't know. I'm not about like that whole like bunker set up and plan for 50 years and then lock yourself away. But I think, and I mean, it's not his fault, but I think Rick was very smart in falling comatose for 3 months or whatever. Because then, yeah, you get to wait out all of the beginning of it, which if you watch like Fear the Walking Dead, it's fucking intense and no one survives because everyone's looting and everyone's fighting and killing and like whatever. But if you wait it out somehow, if you can stock up and hide out somewhere for a little bit and kind of let things die down, I think that's the way to go, especially because then you can kind of like do like, you know, pick from like, not bare bones, but you know, then you can go kind of like scavenge
Retreat
and
to the woods.
kind of pick from what's left.
Retreat to the woods.
Yeah, and then I would flee to the woods and become Daryl Dixon.
Don't we all just want to be a little more like Daryl Dixon? Shoot a crossbow.
I am like Daryl Dixon. What do you mean a little bit more?
You're not wearing a leather jacket. You don't ride a motorcycle. Also, your hair's too short.
Not necessarily. There was a time when it was like, you want to be Daryl Dixon? You want to dress up as Daryl Dixon? Okay, you got to shave your fucking head. Now I just got to grow my hair out a little more. It's getting there. I haven't had a haircut.
I guess your hair's more like first couple seasons of Daryl.
It's like season 3. Season 3, season 4. We're a little past prison Daryl. Prison.
That's actually not a terrible idea. Hole up in a prison.
Actually, though, yeah, no, that season is really, really fucking smart. Other than the fact that like there were other prisoners in there for a while, but you have the gates and the fences all around you, and then you know they built a fucking farm on this prison, but then also all the storage of the prison and all the weaponry and all the, you know, you got the guard towers. It was pretty dope setting there. I think also though the farm is not a bad one, being kind of secluded. Mm-hmm. It works until a fucking horde comes through and you're fucked. But it's not bad to start for sure. I think the main idea for apocalypse planning is to be secluded enough so that you're not in a big ass population.
Right.
Because that's where all the chaos
happens.
Stock up on
supplies, retreat to the woods.
Yeah. No, honestly, I mean, and even in season 1 they do that because, you know, you see like the roads are
terrible.
Atlanta is terrible, and like not only are you away from all the people, but also you're away from all the zombies and the dead, because if you're in a big overly populated city and everyone dies, now you're just in a giant horde of zombies and you got to get out of them. But if you're in the more secluded area and you run into zombies, they're going to be in smaller groups until they horde up. But
I was watching Zombieland 2.
That's the way to go.
And at one point he's reading The Walking Dead. He's like, this is totally unrealistic. Just throws it away.
I would like to say it's fairly realistic. And then, you know, eventually you can start your plan of like rebuilding the world, start Alexandria or whatever, do your thing. I don't know. I would still probably do Daryl and
Just
do the Daryl thing and go run off in the woods with a
just
dog.
bugger off for a little while.
Live my life.
Yeah, I mean, that works for me. That's what I would do. Just bugger off for a bit.
Yeah. Honestly, I've thought about it even before the apocalypse.
I mean, I've been thinking about it more recently because the world seems to be ending. But, now I feel like there's a modicum of hope. And maybe we won't all die.
Maybe a little bit.
I mean, we probably will, but it's fine.
God. Well.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. And sticking with us. Make sure you subscribe and continue to listen so you can get the little notification that we have uploaded every week, every Friday.
Oh, yeah. For 13 weeks or whatever it is by the time you listen to this.
Yeah. Yeah. Alrighty.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.